Hello gamers, my name is Troll Gaming. Let's talk about Hylics. In thinking about new video ideas, I was thinking about what indie games have inspired me most. Ones that come to mind include Who's Lila, Psychopomp, Cruelty Squad, and in reflecting on all those, I think one that really popped into my head was Hylics. Surprisingly, despite this game being as old as it is, the Hylics community continues to make posts online and show a lot of love for the game, and so I wanted to reciprocate that for what this game has meant to me and how it's influenced how I see games and what I like about different indie games. Now, as you can see on my channel, most of my games are a little bit weird, a little bit obscure, and that really speaks to my preference in games. I think the more games come out, I've started to learn, I'm starting to shy away from like maybe AAA titles and really getting into these like projects of love made by like single developers or a small team, to which Hylics is no exception. So what is Hylics? Steam describes it as a surreal, abstract RPG maker RPG. It has an uncanny appearance, the motion is stop motion, all the text is randomly generated, the art is made by hand, otherwise just contains a lot of typical RPG elements you might expect to find in any other RPG game, including ways to level up, finding better gear throughout the game to level up your characters, a little bit of min-maxing here and there. In combat, you encounter various weird-looking creatures that are hard to decipher what they really are, but to defeat them, you can use your regular attack, which is Snap, special abilities that can vary in damage or healing, and different items that assist you in combat. Now, these aren't just normal abilities. Throughout the game, you can find different TVs that provide you different abilities that you can learn for your party members, including space shurikens. You can use Mystic Meat, which removes all your negative status ailments. You have Detonation. And over time, you can find more powerful spells that impact the battle in a much more significant way. The same goes for items. In the game, there's health broken up into health points. There's also will, which is like kind of like your magic in the game. And to restore these, you can use either hot dogs mid-combat, you can use warm burritos to revive your teammates. If you don't want to warm up your burrito, you could throw the burrito at him while it's still frozen to do damage.
Bruh.
There's also dynamite, which quite literally wipes the screen and has a pretty funny gif that shows how things are being leveled. Now it comes to the story, and to be honest, I'm not really sure what happened in the story after having played it again recently, but I'll try my best to give a summarization as I saw it. So we start out the game playing as Wayne, who is, from appearances, a living moon man. And at first he's kind of just wandering around his house, nothing's not really happening yet. The world really hasn't gone into chaos, but over time, when we begin to venture into the overworld and check out different areas, we can kind of get a glimpse into how things have been overrun by these weird eldritch creatures or strange aliens that find themselves terrorizing the local townspeople. And so through time, we begin to encounter our party members like Didolzman and Pangorma and Samsnosa, and we learn about the overarching plot to this game. And this plot includes the Overlord Gibby looking to make the world spherical when Wayne would rather keep it concave. And anyway, whatever that means, continuing through the 3 acts, that is our goal, to prevent Gibby from doing so and making the world in a way that would otherwise harm Wayne and his friends. Reaching the end of the game, we're successful and we're able to defeat Gibby before he lets us know that he's self-destructed his entire planet, and we can use our spaceship to get off the dying planet and make it back to our homeworld victorious and reaching the end of the game. So yeah, quite the adventure. The narrative is there enough to kind of tie things all together. Again, I'm sure you can deep dive into it and kind of flesh out the different parts to it, but a cool story nonetheless, and playing the hero in this weird space abstract landscape. Now, as we're looking at the different parts of this game, I think we should give some attention to some of the music in this game, because the music's pretty groovy. To my knowledge, I think the composer was a developer himself, Mason Lindroth, and throughout different battle scenes or just in the background or even in like a hidden level where you can find, it's pretty cool, you can find the characters playing different instruments, and on the keyboard you can play different notes or change the different style of your instrument. But in any of these spaces, the music really ties the whole game together and adds to that surreal, abstract vibe, and makes it feel pretty chill when you're playing it. I played this recently, and I think my playthrough was about 5 hours long, and the whole time I felt pretty relaxed, and it was a pretty good time. And so looking at all the different parts of this game, to tie it all together, I wanted to talk a little bit in terms of what makes this game stand out, how it's influenced other games and games similar to it in the indie game space, and some of just my personal thoughts that I haven't already expanded on toward the game. So starting with what makes this game stand out, I think above all else, the unique art and design really ties this all together. I think when you first look at Hylics, that's the first thing that your eye really jumps to, is how the colors are super bright and they pop for one another. The art is very cool and unique from other indie games. I think beyond just the visuals of it, the playstyle feels really familiar and easy to jump into, with a lot of games being made on RPG Maker and just a lot of RPGs in general. If you're someone who enjoys that genre, when you open the game, it feels pretty easy. You're like, okay, here's my character. I gotta go find other characters to add to my party. You know, I want to min-max my build. I want to make some characters are better than other things, and it feels really welcoming and familiar. I feel like the game itself is kind of out there, but it doesn't feel like overwhelming because the game feels so like familiar to play with. In addition to these parts of the game that are so lovable, I think just like the bizarre story and the characters really tie it all together too. I think especially Wayne, just having such an iconic like cheesehead design makes it really cool to learn more about him and learn how he connects with like other characters in the story, whether it be, you know, members of our party, whether it be main villains in the story, or even just like side characters. Every character has its own design and they look cool in like, you know, ways that are different and unique from one another. The game really grows on you after a while. I think within the first hour especially. I'm thinking back to the first time I played this, probably it must have been years ago, and I was like, this game is a lot to look at first, but I think once you're in, you know, the first hour of gameplay, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm starting to see it. Like, it really feels like it clicks. And even just outside of the parts of the game that make it unique, the game's really funny too. I think the hilarity of some of like the absurd parts to it, some of the characters' dialogue that's either like quirky or like sarcastic, especially the yes or no options where it's like you either say yes or like no, why would you suggest that? Like, the sarcasm is palpable and it's really fun to roll with, which adding to that just makes the character so lovable. And again, I can see why this game has become sort of a cult classic and has become honored and for its contributions. And as we continue to look at this game, this next part's gonna be more just my own opinion, but I really feel like this game has influenced the indie game space in terms of what people find themselves drawn to and what really works in terms of, you know, making together an entire game. I think with Hylics and seeing that a second game was even made and the audience was there behind it, I think really highlighting how this game became an instant cult classic when it came out a few years ago, and really highlighting the appeal of kind of like the weirder games, you know, like sort of like games like this where there's like that surrealism aspect to it. There's like things that you don't see every day, some of that charm of the more like abstract parts of the game that I think people have come to love and has carved out a niche in the market for indie games and is really to be celebrated. I think a lot of games that have been popular recently, things like Cruelty Squad, some other games like Dread Delusion, Bob D, I know the creators of Bob D made Straftat that came out recently that was pretty popular, Arctic Eggs, really the list goes on in terms of how games like this really like give permission almost to developers to create games that are sort of out there, like taking risks that may or may not pay off. And I think there's, as time goes on, the community grows for people who love games like this and really want to see developers' creativity come out in ways that are, I think, every time unique and different from one another. I think the love that the developers really put in these games, especially so, stands out in the current market of gaming, where it feels like AAA games aren't, at least from what I've seen, aren't always scratching that niche. I know Baldur's Gate is one that stands against that in terms of like you can really feel like all the love and effort put into that game with how much content and all the different routes and like mysteries and like things hidden in the game you can find. But I think outside of that, I don't really see a whole lot of that in modern games. And so I think with games like Hylics, I think it really introduces the idea that like maybe going back like 10, 20 years ago where developers were really putting their all into games, and the charm, it paid off too. That risk paid off in terms of creating a game uniquely their own and solidifies itself in history for the decades that follow. And so to share my personal thoughts on the game, because this game is so out there, I love this game. I think to kind of put a bow on it, I think there's no other way to say it that I love this game and how like groovy and how like trippy it can be, and the simpleness to it too. I think again, because it is built on RPG Maker, it's kind of this like side by side of like a story and art and world that's created that's so unique, and also just the simplicity of it that makes it feel really easy to get into. A lot of the elements in this game have become inside jokes with me and my friends, including like the snapping toward like an enemy, or the dynamite gif that plays when you blow up the screen, and it's really just a fun time. And then just to reiterate further, the art style is phenomenal. The characters are witty and sarcastic and charming in their own way. Every character is different from one another.
Nice.
Not only just in appearance, but their personality as well. Min-maxing is fun. I think in my playthrough I got Didlesman up to above 100 mightiness, which is like how much damage he can do, and so You have Wayne buff Didelsman, and then Samsonos is the healer, and then you have Pangorma is kind of like the secondary damage dealer, and so finding ways to like add variety to your party and see who's good at what, it was a large part of what I enjoyed in my most recent playthrough. And again, the music, I think, accompanying that is just the cherry on top. And so I think because of all these elements that tie into what makes this game so great, I really do think Hylic has contributed to what, in my head at least, I like to refer as like the indie game renaissance, where you're starting to see many talented developers, either solo developers or small teams, like making these amazing games that quite quickly fill their own niche and have a small community or have a lot of love for people who the game means so much to them, as Hylic does to me in my own personal journey, and as I continue to play different games and see what I like. And because this game means so much to me, I definitely recommend giving it a try. I think you might have a hard time finding games that quite resemble one like this or quite give the same experience, but I definitely think it's one out there in the indie game market, or again within sort of this kind of like corner of like abstract indie games, that if you really enjoy ones like some of those mentioned earlier, like Cruelty Squad, or games that have kind of just a weird vibe to it, I think this game should be added to your bucket list. And as we ran out this discussion of why I love Hylic so much and why I think it's had such large contributions in the gaming community, if you really enjoyed this video, I'd encourage you to like and subscribe. Or if you had a favorite part of your own playthrough or this video itself, or have your own thoughts, please comment them down below. Also, I recently created a Patreon if you'd like to support me and help me continue to make videos. I'll include the link down below. Thank you for watching and listening to my thoughts on the game, and we'll see you next time. This has been Droll Gaming, signing off.